So let's talk about individual countries and the types of archives you would find in those countries. And we're going to start out with the French archives. And in France, there are four major types of genealogical repositories. You have the National Archives, the Department Archives, the Town Registrars, and other libraries and archives. And one thing you have to remember is that over half of the vital records in France have been microfilmed and may be available through Family Search and in the family history centers. So you want to start in Family Search first and see if the records are there. In some cases, the images might be there and they might not be indexed, or the indexes might be there and the images aren't there, or the images may be restricted. You have to look in a family history center. But if the images are not available on Family Search, you can find the archive in the French archives that may have those images, and you might be able to find them online utilizing those archives. So, where do you start if you're not familiar with how the French archives are laid out or what types of records you might find in there? My first suggestion is to look at the Family Search Wiki and type in French archives and see what the results are there. There's an extensive discussion on, the links to the archives, the records that are available, when you're going to find records, how long are they held before they are released? Is it 100 years after a birth record and 50 years after a marriage record, or, some other numbers? So that way you're knowing that you may or may not be able to find the records you're looking for. France GenWeb is also a great resource to talk about what you would find in the archives there, and also the Family History Guide. If you go to the Family History Guide and you look in the countries, most of the countries have a heading for archives and libraries. And when you click on that, you'll get some more information about how to utilize the archives for those countries. So make sure you check these three locations for the French archives, but you utilize the wiki and the Family History Guide for any country you're looking for to find out more about the archives and what's available there. So the French National Archives, you can see that the page has a French, a Spanish, and an English version on it, and has an online catalog that you can search. The interesting thing about the archives here, again, they're set up in thematic structure. So the first image you see there is how to starting your genealogy, and that's an example of marital status. The next one is looking for naturalization files. The next one is notarized deeds, and the one after that is soldiers, and this goes on for several more different themes. And so you can sort of narrow down the type of records that you're looking for. Another way of going in is looking at the departmental archives. Now, these are the individual states, basically, within France. There are 96 departments in France. Okay, so there's a lot of departments. Each department has its own archive, and those archives serve as the repositories for the local records. So you're going to find your civil registration, your birth, marriage, death records, the church records, the census records, military records, and other notarial records, real estate and things of that sort, maybe wills. So you can see you need to know pretty well where your family comes from in order to find the department that you're looking for. So I'm going to give an example here, looking at these departments. So when you're looking at the physical location for the department, it's usually located in the largest town in that department, and the records have to be more than 100 years old to be placed there. If they're less than 100 years old, they're still stored in the town archives. But after 100 years, then those town records are moved into the department archives. So how do you find your archive? Well, you can find this map if you go to the link that I have on the screen here, the francearchives.fr, and go to departments there. And I'm going to give you an example. Maybe you know that your ancestor is from Alsace-Lorraine. Okay, well, when you look up Alsace-Lorraine, that actually consists of 3 departments: Moselle, Bas-Rhin, and Haut-Rhin. So I'm going to show an example of what the Bas Rhine region looks like in their archives. And I really like the Bas Rhine archives. I've done quite a bit of research within it. I like the way they lay it out, and it's very easy to follow compared to some other archives. So I'm in the Bas Rhine archives. Of course, this page is normally written in French, but I've done the English translation, so you can see the information that's here. You see that they have a highlight on the databases of victims of the Second World War, so you can look at that. But down below, they have your parish records and civil status documents, your population censuses, and they give you the ability to help them index the records. So they have a collaborative indexing program. So if you're able to read these records, you may want to volunteer and index some of these records so they become searchable. You can see up at the top also, they have a period of record from 700 to 2017. This is a little older screenshot, so it doesn't have anything beyond 2017 in it. But let's say that I want to look at the parish records. I want to look at those church records. So I'll click on that image at the bottom left-hand corner, and it pulls up the parish registers and civil records that are kept in the Lower Rhine, Bas Rhine region since the 16th century. And notice it says here that this goes from the 16th century to 1912. Okay, so you know that any records after 1912, you can't find those records in this archive. But if it was before 1912, back to the 16th century, you may be able to find it. It also says the Adaloc application. So if you click on the image, you're going to get a video. The video is going to be in French, so you may not be able to understand what they're saying. But in this case here, you need to click on the Adaloc application in order to read the archives themselves. And then it asks you to enter in your community. Okay, so in this case, I was doing some research on Strasbourg, but every single town that's in that department in Bas Rhine will have their own archival set of records. So you need to know what town they actually came from in order to do the search. So I typed in Strasbourg, and again, I have the parish registers here, and they have the parish registers, the 10-year tables, which are basically the census sort of tables, and then the registers of civil status. And you also see up at the top, it says St. Laurent. So these are the St. Laurent parish records. And then it'll transfer over and have another parish records and start in the same year and move forward again. So you need to go to the location of the church, which church they may have attended. You see that their records are set up like a library, like a bookshelf. And you see all of the book sitting on the shelf, and then the types of records at the top and the years for those records at the bottom of the book. So if I'm looking for a marriage record for 1710 to 1742, I'm going to go to that book that says M, 1710 to 1742. And then I'm going to click on the book and start reading it. And this is what happens when you open up the book. You can see the records written out in detail here. And you can go page by page. You can download the pages, you can print them, you can save them. The interesting thing about the Alsace-Lorraine region is that they'll be in French for a period of time, then the records will be in German, then they'll be in Latin, then they'll be back in French again. So you're going to have a variety of different languages that you may encounter as you're doing your research here, depending on, was it under French control, German control? Did they just decide to write the church records in Latin, and so on? Then they have their town registers, and these are the civil registration offices for each town. These are where the original records are held. Their records are less than 100 years old. As I said, if they're greater than 100 years old, they're moved to the departmental archives. The only way you can find the town registrars and town records is to go physically to those towns and visit them, or send a request to them and see if somebody will make copies of them for you. They're not online yet. There's also the genealogical library in Paris, and that one has some records. It includes indexes for birth, marriage, and death records. So you may be able to find some records there that'll help you figure out where you're looking for your ancestors.